Welcome to GridTalk. My name is George Howson, and today we're here to discuss the season-ending 2024 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Joining me today, we have GridTalk's Owain Medford
Hello.
and Ruby Price
Hello.
and Dev Tyagi from the F1 Chronicle.
Hey.
But before we get into this episode, first we must thank our sponsors. As usual, it's BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball to NHL and UFC. Head over to BetOnline today and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. It's been a while since I've hosted one of these. Can you tell, guys? For your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, and also be sure to follow us on social media at GridTalk UK on pretty much everywhere you can find the @ symbol. So, let's dive into the race. The season-ending Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. It was a very dramatic one, of course, where we saw eventually, Ruby, spoiler alert, McLaren winning their first Constructors' Championship since 1998. The first time since both of their drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, were born. Despite it being a front row lockout for the Woking outfit, though, it was a rather nervy affair in this one.
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, from turn one, the hearts will have been in the mouths of every single member of the McLaren team back at Woking. They were watching it at the technology center, even like on the pit lane. Just, yeah, I mean, from Max Verstappen putting his car up the inside into what was always going to be a closing gap on the inside of Oscar Piastri. Just not a risk that he needed to make. His championship battle was already over, but McLaren obviously very much just needing to finish ahead of Ferrari today. And Lando Norris absolutely did that. He, did exactly what he needed to do. He's finished ahead of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. But yeah, just not the best of days for Oscar Piastri, but he's managed to stay ahead of Carlos Sainz in the Drivers' Championship at the very least by coming down to just 2 points in the end, and that's the 2 points that he picked up in P9. So he's done what he needed to do to stay ahead. But yeah, McLaren are Constructors' Champions for the first time since before some of even our hosts were born.
Yeah, well, no prizes for guessing who that is, but it's pretty much been most of our lives in that case, either way, even if we were alive back then, we weren't even in primary school by that time, so it's been a very, very long time. And as you can tell, I'm quite happy about that news. But yeah, it was definitely not a straightforward one. Obviously, Piastri and Max Verstappen coming to blows in the first corner. Verstappen getting a 10-second penalty for that. Piastri, though, a bit after that, smashed into the back of Franco Colapinto, getting a 10-second penalty of his own. Dev, I mean, it was a mixed bag today for Piastri, to say the least. I think it was a commendable recovery, to be honest, but I think maybe a little bit of inexperience showing a bit of the pressure, making an unnecessary move on Colapinto like that. But at the end of the day, like Lewis Hamilton's dad Anthony used to tell his son, let your driving do the talking. Do your talking in the car. And he absolutely did that today with some incredible pace at times.
Yeah, I think, on the whole, Oscar Piastri shouldn't really be disappointed by the kind of year he's had. When you talk about the driver standings, and of course, overtaking and actually maintaining the lead over Carlos Sainz, and as Ruby rightly pointed out, by a scant margin of 2 points, and still managing to contribute very handsomely to the constructors' title, rightly regained by McLaren. He should be very happy, man. And just the kind of season that he's had on the whole, he has already, in a very young career of his, collected 389 points already. And if you were to actually consider the average median of 23 races in the last 2 seasons, of course, we had another race this year, this being the longest. And if you were to multiply it by 25, so he scored 389 of the 575 points available. I'm not talking about the fastest lap extra points. So that's a remarkable tally of points for a 23-year-old. And of course, he, began his McLaren career brightly with 2 podiums in his maiden year. And then this year, he's gone on to bag I think, some extraordinary drives there. I'm personally a huge fan of his effort at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. I really thought that Charles had that win in the bag, but ultimately, Piastri proving why the Oscar belongs to him for trying so hard and ultimately, emerging as a very vital contender in whose hands rests the bright new chapter for McLaren in this era of resurgence. So he should hold his head high, I would think.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's so easy to forget this is his second season in Formula One, and
Just
he's
his second
so
season.
young. Yeah, he's driving at time. I mean, people have been genuinely saying through a lot of this season, and with justification as well, particularly in the latter half of the season, that Piastri is the stronger driver out of those two at McLaren. But Owain, it was the guy that has finished higher in the standings, the guy who's got second place in the drivers' standings, the only guy that's had a chance of challenging Max Verstappen at times for this drivers' championship. Let's not underestimate how impressive Lando Norris was today. He didn't have a wingman; he had both Ferraris charging him down. He made a gap in the early stages of the race, basically negated any kind of undercut that Carlos Sainz could have pulled on him throughout the race, and he just kept his head cool, and it was in the end a dominant drive by him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, clearly the McLaren was fastest, and Norris just used it, to it, used it to the fullest of his ability. He didn't get finally didn't get bogged down off the start, didn't get overtaken at the start. Managed to lead into the first corner, and that was essentially it. I mean, it was quite an entertaining race by Abu Dhabi standards. But as you say, the fact that he just managed to manage the gap and he was helped out a little bit by the drivers in second and third colliding, with that being Piastri and Verstappen, and I think that helped a little bit. It bagged him a couple of seconds, but that doesn't account for the rest of them. And to manage that over 58 laps, when, as you say, he could have been fairly easily undercut, says so much of his driving ability, and it's one of the reasons that he does have such a large gap to, past the 5.8 seconds to Sainz. It's why he's got such a large gap afterwards, and why we had to wait so long for Leclerc to form up on the grid afterwards. It was an absolutely astounding drive. It's the kind of thing where you can kind of tell how, that how it could have been a lot more of an sort of a closer world championship challenge that he would have been able to make if McLaren had been early, had got this kind of car earlier in the season. Unfortunately, it took them a while to develop that, but this is, I think, a sign for things to come. As Dev says, this is probably going to be, going into next year as the field closes up again, unless they drop the ball. It's a sign of things to come, and hopefully we will be having a proper championship fight next year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you take out the first 6 or 7 rounds of this, so it's it's an incredibly tight championship that I think Verstappen would probably win anyway, but it would have most likely gone to the final round in Abu Dhabi. But yeah, both Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, rightfully after this race, coming out in the media and saying that their aim for next year is to become Drivers' World Championship, and it should absolutely be the case that is their aim. Speaking of championships, though, let's talk about Max Verstappen. We've mentioned his incident with Oscar Piastri off the line. I mean, Ruby, what's your take on this one? Because, you got a 10-second penalty for it. But I think no matter where you stand on, whether you should go for a gap if it's there, whether you should think that, oh, maybe Piastri should have given him more room, been more circumspect about it. I think ultimately it just feels a bit unnecessary. Like Verstappen was just, racing for pride at this point. Did he really need to go absolutely sending it down the inside into turn one?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of alluded to this earlier when I was talking about McLaren's start with Oscar Piastri, but it's Max Verstappen was starting this race in what was it, P4, I think, and like I say, his championship was already sealed. Red Bull weren't going to move in terms of positions either, regardless of how anybody around them did. So, there is obviously that champion's instinct of I need to win this. I need to win it. Max Verstappen wants to win every single thing he's ever entered. It's why he sounds so frustrated on the radio that the car that the team delivered at the start is not the car that they've had towards the end of the season. As you said as well, maybe Oscar Piastri could have left a little bit more room on the inside, but at the same time, it's his corner. and it's always going to tighten up that angle, and Max knows this, particularly from where he's put the car. And there's some conspiracy theories that maybe, Oscar Piastri was planning to take out Verstappen to, make it easier for McLaren throughout the entire race, but I think that's a load of nonsense. Because you're not going to try and take out cars deliberately, at least not if you're an honest racing driver, which Oscar Piastri seems to be on the side of. But yeah, that first corner move, just unnecessary. It's tarred Red Bull's race ultimately. You could say it's potentially even led to the sort of tightening up towards the back end where Perez has ultimately ended up being taken out, in another collision going on, which, in fairness, should Sergio Perez have been in that position in the first place? Probably not. But yeah, just a weekend to forget about very quickly for Max Verstappen. And, I guess from that perspective, a fairly decent recovery to finish ultimately in P6, but it could have been a lot more if you don't win the race in the first corner.
But you can certainly lose it. And in that moment, he definitely lost it right there. Yeah, sixth place, a decent recovery for him in the end. And like you said, Sergio Perez, just Perez, you just think it can't get any worse, but then it does. I mean, yeah, he got in the top 10 for a change during qualifying, but he was out qualified by Valtteri Bottas's Sauber, so he wasn't exactly quick. Unlike a certain Sir Lewis Hamilton, who of course competed in his final race for Mercedes, been a part of the Mercedes family in a sense since 1998, that year again. 26 years he's been either racing for McLaren, who were of course powered by Mercedes back in the day. And ever since then, Mercedes as well, 6 world championships, untold amounts of wins and podiums, and it seemed as though after qualifying, and I said this to Ruby as well, then it just seemed like, oh God, are we really gonna have to talk about Hamilton where he's just not gonna have a great weekend? He was well down in qualifying. I think it was 18th, started 16th because of penalties. But in the end, Dev, he showed an absolute champion's drive. And I think that's what Toto Wolff said on the radio after the race as well. It was an incredible performance by Sir Lewis to even beat his teammates, something that after the first few laps didn't seem possible, but Sir Lewis managed it again. Sorry, Dev, you're on mute.
Yeah. Am I audible? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why he's been knighted, and rightly so. And Sir Lewis Hamilton, once again, as you rightly pointed out, proving why he's such a high-class driver under pressure. The emotions may have been so high that it would actually be indescribable. I run out of adjectives. He's been prolific, and this has been the most iconic, the most legendary alliance with Mercedes, the most iconic driver and team alliance in ever, in the 7-decade plus history of the most amazing sport in the world. And I mean, what he has sort of ballooned to mind-bending statistics that he's gathered with Mercedes, 6 world titles, I think 84 race wins, 153 podiums, even finishing this one. I mean, for me, this was as good as a podium finish. I can bet my life on it that if in place of Carlos Sainz, who I admire a lot, if it was Sir Lewis Hamilton chasing Lando Norris, he would have brought down the gap to 2.5 seconds, because Hamilton has that amazing talent and ability of looking after the tires so well, especially when, these are the most testing conditions of a race. The dying moments of the race, he just brings out his A game. And I'm sure it's going to be a massive, massive void to fill. But as Mercedes move on to the most enterprising chapter in their modern history, with Kimi Antonelli now joining in George Russell, I think Hamilton is going to progress to the most enthralling bit in his career. And I really think he's going to give Charles Leclerc a run for his money, because it's really not about age anymore. It's not even a number. It's just a myth. Hamilton is, I mean, he can school the youngest driver on the grid on any given day. I mean, who would have thought that he would have made past P10 at best? But here we have him as the best of the grid behind the 3 podium places. So hats off to Sir Lewis, and an incredible year, and winning in front of home fans at Silverstone. I mean, that was a remarkable achievement to boot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, th this year has been an absolute roller coaster for Sir Lewis. You know, he's had for me, he's had some of the lowest moments in his F1 career this year, and also some of the most emotional and incredible as well. I mean, I have no shame in admitting I was almost in tears when he won at Silverstone. I never thought that a guy winning a race when he's got no hope of winning the championship, really, even at that point, would have moved me so much, but it did, because it's him.
And if I may just add one more line there, besides his awe-inspiring achievements and all the world titles, he stands as an exemplary example of humility. The the way he conducts himself, I think it is a testament to all the young drivers rising through the ranks of how not to get lost in the razzmatazz of glory and money, fame, and all the accolades that come your way. Just to put his head down, just put the visors down, and be race ready every weekend, and just to put his best out there. I mean, this is really showmanship, which is based on high level of skill. That's all I can say.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like I was saying, I mean, this has been a real roller coaster of emotions for Hamilton, and the fact that he stormed for. I mean, when Bono was saying on I'll be honest, when Bono was saying on the radio, "Oh, Lewis, we might have a P3," I was thinking, "You'll need a safety car for that. There is no, there's no way you're getting P3 otherwise." And he ended up getting P4, so he almost achieved that. Um, but Owain, I mean, let's just talk about Hamilton a little bit more because, like we said, this is the most successful partnership in Formula One history. Even if you take away the McLaren Mercedes, it's just the Mercedes AMG days. The achievements that he's managed in that time has been absolutely mesmeric. And to pick himself up after doubting himself so much, admitting that he's had that much self-doubt, saying after Brazil that he wants to go on holiday, saying after Qatar, or saying during Qatar, I should say, that he wanted to pull the car in and retire, and still pick himself up to pull off an incredible drive in Las Vegas. And to be honest, given the pace of the Mercedes, I'd say today's drive was even more impressive than what we saw in Las Vegas a few weeks back.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly fast today, was it? It wasn't, I'll put it this way: he ended up on the first lap after, in the sort of same position as Verstappen, and Verstappen was sort of starting to pull away and clearing through the field. Now, obviously, Hamilton was the only one on the meat on the hard tyres at the time. By all accounts, they weren't particularly good. As everyone moved to a one stop, so I think it honestly it didn't seem like anything was going to happen. And I thought it was going to be a depressing day at the office, but as you say, the ability to sort of take that and then use all of his experience to kind of put that to bed and then do a brilliant stint and really extend those tires to the point where he could switch to the mediums at the end um, and really just chew through the gap to his teammate. Is a testament to how impressive he has been. Um, and I think the thing that will live with will live with me for a long time is an overtake round the outs is the overtake on his teammate round the outside. So it's a little bit easier because it is on Russell, and Russell knows not to throw it in the barrier. Might have defended a bit harder where another driver, but it was round the outside on turn 9, and we'd seen drivers trying it all race. I think it may have been Doohan, maybe gave it a go. Or maybe it was Gasly. I can't quite remember. It was one of the Alpines trying to do that. But on the last lap of the Grand Prix to do a round the outside overtake, it says enough about the car control because it's a little bit slippery out there, even though drivers have been going through with different lines all race. But I think it's a testament to his skill and honestly, it's going to be so different without that. It's been sort of almost relentless. Hamilton at Mercedes. It's 8 world titles, 7 of them. Sorry, 8 world titles and then 7 drivers' championships. Is absolutely astounding, and it's not without some competition. We had a illegally fast Ferrari to compete with, who they beat on not just speed but also ability to just operational ability, and then obviously fighting off a resurgent Red Bull and taking it down to the very last race, obviously in 2021. obviously the ground effect era, as it's been brought back in, has not been so good. But this is a team that's learned a lot from burning through their tires in 2013 to just being absolutely astounding the rest of the time. And it's got to be in huge part to Lewis Hamilton. He's been this kind of thing, the person that has sort of helped the team forward and has been sort of a constant. When for other teams it's been chopping and changing. I think he's massively helped with the success of the team and left them in a better place than when he got there.
Yeah, far better place to be. The upturn in Mercedes, during the first parts of the V6 tour era were just unbelievable. And he was an instrumental part of that for sure. And just being there for 12 seasons, I mean, that's longer than most drivers' tires careers. And here he is, approaching 40 years of age. He's going to start a new chapter at Ferrari, which, yeah, until I see it, it's just going to be so strange until we actually see him in red overalls. But I'm excited to see it because he's clearly still got it. I feel like he just needs at times just to. I don't know. The car's definitely not helped at times for sure, but just that self-belief I think sometimes has been waning for him, which I just find incredible. As someone that has achieved as much as he has, but he's human at the end of the day. You'd never guess it sometimes with his driving, but he's human at the end of the day. I mean, Ruby, what's your kind of reflections on this year for Hamilton? Because it's been a year when he's won a few races, he's got some podiums, he's had some incredible low points, like I've said as well. But overall, I would say, even with the performance of the Mercedes not being the best at times, he's showing that Charles Leclerc is not going to have an easy time next year at Ferrari.
He's certainly not, and I think anyone who thinks that Leclerc is going to completely wipe the floor with Hamilton next season is underestimating the impact that Lewis Hamilton's going to have. People were saying that when Lewis was going to join Mercedes for 2013, I think Martin Whitmarsh actually famously said they would welcome Lewis back when he realised his mistake of moving to Mercedes in 2012. And people are obviously expecting Nico Rosberg to wipe the floor with him in 2013. And, you know, Nico Rosberg had been in the Mercedes team at that point for 2 years. He was very much helping set the team up properly to move forwards. But he came in and he became the personality of Mercedes. And this season, as you've said, it's not been the strongest time from the Mercedes Hamilton partnership since the ground effect cars came in. Lewis has been running Frankenstein setups on his car in order to try and get the most understanding of, what ultimately was a developmental dead end for the Mercedes team. This season, they got the look of the car right at the start of the season. I'm not actually too sure on how it looked towards the end of the season. I think the car looked a bit worse, but they got the look of it right, and eventually they got the speed of it right. And that Silverstone moment, just the last few laps, the commentary that keeps resurfacing on my Instagram Reels algorithm every now and then, like it's peak cinema. Like, forget about Brad Pitt's Formula One movie. 2024 Silverstone, Lewis Hamilton's drive. Watch that for the length of a feature movie, and you've got a great evening of entertainment there. But if it doesn't bring a tear to your eye, listening to Bono so joyous on the radio, Lewis Hamilton declaring his love for the team, the relationship that they've got there, like that's what F1's about. And I think what we've lacked for a few seasons was that human element of it, because it's not just about the machinery, it's the human and the machine. And this season has had it, and it's had the lowest parts for Lewis Hamilton, it's had the highest parts for Lewis Hamilton, and it's culminated today in a drive from P16 to P4. And that's just peak Lewis Hamilton Mercedes, and that's the best way they could have ended it.
Yeah, and for the last time in a race review in 2024, I think it is fair to say that that is a five-star performance from Sir Lewis Hamilton. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we'd love it if you could take five to leave us a five-star rating on Spotify or an Apple Podcast as well. And also, if you're one of the 72% of people who aren't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, go over and help subscribe to us over there as well. We'll have plenty of content in the off season as always, and you can watch the show live just like this one is going out now, and you can join us for some post-show content as well. We've already got some fantastic comments I'm hearing on the live chat as well, so we'll be diving into that after the regular race review. But let's talk about Ferrari. Now, we've mentioned Ferrari a little bit so far. I mean, they were obviously in the battle with McLaren heading into this race. They had a bit of an outside shot. It didn't really seem like it was going to be possible for them after qualifying. McLaren, all they had to do was win, and they just about did that. But Ferrari, they have to be commended for the upturn in performance again, Dev. I mean, I remember after Belgium, I was thinking Ferrari are looking like the fourth fastest car here. You know, they might lose out to third place for Mercedes this season, and how wrong I was, how much their pace had changed so much. I mean, Charles Leclerc, you know, starting last after his grid penalty, after his lap time in Q2 was deleted for track limits, it was an incredible comeback for him, incredible pace for him overall, and a very solid drive for Carlos Sainz as well to put Lando Norris under pressure for as long as he did. And in the end, the gap was just 14 points, with over 650 scored each for McLaren and Ferrari. So how do you reflect on what is a so close but so far season for Ferrari, but massive progress, no doubt?
I think if there's one person that they have left elated about this performance is Sir Lewis Hamilton. He would not be complaining because he's definitely seeing a lot of progress there at Maranello, and it's reflecting track after track, race after race weekend. And if you actually see Carlos Sainz's performances actually over the course of the last five Grand Prix, there are three podium finishes. He won a brilliant race at Mexico. Actually his first podium position ever was a P2 that he earned in 2021 Monaco, and he ends his Ferrari career with a P2. He arrived at the Scuderia camp in 2021, the maiden year, proving a bit successful for him as far as the intra-teammate rivalry was concerned. He beat Leclerc by 5.5 points, one of the most underappreciated Carlos Sainz achievements as on date, personally feel. Because, in a year where it was pitted to be like Leclerc would get the better of his opponent, and how Carlos Sainz showed in the mirror, with much due respect to Charles. He did a commendable job today, from 19th to P3 in the end. I mean, day of great valiance, great determination, and never say die. Deservingly earning 24% votes for, the driver of the day performance. And I've just sort of lost the count of the number of overtakes that he had. There was a close battle with his best friend, Pierre Gasly, there as well. Them coming very close to each other on turns 12, 13, and 14. The gap being, I think, 10 hundredth, a hundredth of a second or something like that. They were crazily close to each other. And I did feel that Charles would just sort of relent, but he didn't. In the end, of course, he put a lot of pressure on his tires, and I think it was a good one-stop strategy at the end of the day. Ferrari, for a change, not bungling up the pit strategy, and deservingly seeing both their committed drivers on the podium. Couldn't have asked for more, but definitely they were no match for McLaren's immensity in pace. And but P2, I don't think that they can complain. And Carlos Sainz, of course, earning each of his four race wins in red racing overalls. And I remember the sterling performance at Silverstone, to the spirited triumph at Singapore, then the mesmerizing victory at Melbourne, and finally, in Sergio Perez land, emerging victorious at Mexico. So he's gonna feel very happy about it, and he rightly admitted that it doesn't feel that bad losing his spot rather to Sir Lewis Hamilton of all drivers. So, but let's see whether he can bring all that experience and all that grit and resilience to Williams's end. It should be a good pairing, Albon and Sainz. I'm looking forward to it personally.
Me too, me too. It's a really strong driver pairing. It's one of the strongest on the grid, in my opinion. They just need the car to be able to kind of convert that pace, make the most of it. But we'll see what Williams can manage in 2025. Now, we've talked a lot about the battle at the top of the Constructors' Championship, but there was another really big one as well. This for sixth place between Alpine, Haas, and a very much an outside shot of RB crashing the party. But that was a relatively unlikely one from the get-go. But fair play to Alpine. Now, I have been one of the biggest critics of Alpine. I've not had many nice words to say about them this season at all. But and it's not just a flash in the pan in Brazil. That, of course, catapulted them up the order. But In Pierre Gasly's hands in particular, Wayne, that Alpine has been looking solid. He's been regularly up in the top 10 in qualifying, getting some good points finishes. And despite Nico Hulkenberg all the way up in fourth on the grid, Gasly finished ahead of him, P7 for Gasly, and that was enough to clinch sixth in the Constructors' Championship. So, how do you reflect on this season for Alpine? Because again, it's been a roller coasters ride, a lot of downs, but at the end of the day, when it mattered, they produced.
Um, I think overall, they've snatched a good season from a very, very difficult one. Um, I don't think that they've been particularly inspiring. We've been lambasting them basically all year. They've come good in the last, what was it, 5 races. I can't quite remember exactly when they shot up. They got second and third, and I can't remember when, off the top of my head. But yeah, but their performance in Brazil, sorry, thank you, Ruby, is really what catapult. Sorry, I was not listening. I was
It's all
listening to.
right. I have that effect on people, you know. It's
I
it's
was li-
it's okay, mate. I'm
I
used
listened
to
to
it.
I listened to the latter half of the question, because that's what the actual question is. Um, but no, that like you say, that 2-3 in Brazil is really turned their season around. Obviously, their car was slightly better in the latter half, but from Kota onwards. Um, but otherwise, it's been relatively uninspiring, and I don't think that they can take this sixth place. Um, I wouldn't be popping champagne corks just yet. They've still got a lot of troubles ahead. With selling the team and well, sorry, not well, allegedly selling the team potentially, and moving to Mercedes power, which could be a benefit to them, particularly as we go through a rule change that clearly Alpine Renault has been behind on for the entirety of the hybrid era. Let's be honest, this is over 10 years, and they've always had the worst power unit, apart from that spell with Honda. So that's what 2 or 3 years where they've not had the. It's been an issue for them when they were powering Red Bull. It's been an issue for them powering themselves. Um, yeah, as Ruby has pointed out in the chat, the fact that they had a head start on Honda by a lot and have managed to finish behind them, um, it says so much about Alpine's issues, both on the power plant side and the operational side. They've bungled seemingly everything, and I think this is a a bright spark that they've lucked into to be ahead of Haas when Haas have been, I think, operationally so much better. They've earned those 58 points a lot more than I think Alpine have. Yes, Alpine were in the right place at the right time to pick up that 2-3, but otherwise, I think that there's a lot to do at Alpine before as a works team before they can be considered anything better than sort of lucky in this case. That's my opinion on it. I genuinely worry for Alpine a lot of the time.
Yeah, the famous phrase that I use quite a bit is, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. But I don't think that applies to Alpine in 2024, to be honest, with the greatest of respect to them. But at the end of the day, they have ended up sixth. It's not where they wanted to be, but where they were in ninth not that long ago. I think they will more than take it in the end. Yeah, Haas, I feel for Haas, it's an improvement for sure. They're not last this year, of course, which is better, but they could have been, they were so close to getting that sixth place, so close, and they definitely deserved it. But they'll come out swinging in 2025, I'm sure. Now, we've mentioned a few penalties in this one, Ruby. Now, something that I wasn't really aware of before we started chatting before the show started was that the drivers actually asked for the stewards to be more harsh on this. And to be fair, they've listened. So again, another 10-second stop go, this time for Liam Lawson being released with his car with his wheel not attached to his car properly. Plenty of 10-second penalties for collisions. Is this what the drivers do you think they might be actually kind of regretting this potentially asking for the stewards to be so harsh because they seem to have no problems with dishing out penalties at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been noticed that the stewards have been a lot more penalty happy recently. And as you said as well, it's something that the drivers have actually specifically asked for. They wanted there to be a harsher penalty for breaking the rules, particularly in like a poor sportsmanship like side of things. So, for track limits infringements repeatedly, something that the teams and drivers have always been calling for there to be more of a clamp down on, despite the fact that they keep abusing said track limits. But I guess, that's what an F1 driver is always gonna do. The limits are there. Let's just push them a little bit. But yeah, track limits infringements, collisions. Obviously, we saw so much with the 5 second penalties that it was just so easy for a driver to push someone off the road and just put the foot down and just get some time between you and your rival that you've just ruined the race of. Um, Whereas 10 seconds is, of course, a bit, well, it's double the amount of time that you've got to then put that between you and your rival. So it does make sense that they're like making it a bit more harsh in that way. But as you say, now that they're being so penalty happy, it's like the Oprah meme of you get a penalty, you get a penalty, you get a penalty. Max Verstappen got a 10-second penalty for the incident on Oscar Piastri at turn one. Piastri then got a 10-second penalty cancelling that out for his later incident hitting the back of Colapinto whilst the VSE was still, in the picture. Um, so that kind of leveled it out, but you know, you've got to put a proper penalty in place to make it so that you can't just strategically take a penalty and, sort it out yourself. A 10-second stop and go penalty that we saw as well for Liam Lawson. That's an operational thing, like releasing a car in an unsafe condition. Like that's got to be one of the harshest penalties that you can get. But I think we've seen incidents that should have probably been given that level of severity of punishment that obviously got something like maybe a reprimand or even a 5 second penalty. But I'm hoping that they're just going to be consistent about it now. I think that's what's missing. Because even as the broadcast was explaining that the drivers had asked for more severe penalties, at that exact moment, Guan Yu Zhou gets a 5 second penalty for a false start infringement. And like if that doesn't sum up the stewarding of Formula One in 2024, I don't know what does. But yeah, I think they've asked for it, they're gonna get it, and I hope they just now be consistent with it.
Yeah, I'm sure the drivers won't complain about it at any point at all as well. And that's definitely not going to happen. And as Aidan, our fantastic live producer, has pointed out as well, Valtteri Bottas, if he does come back to Formula One, has a 5 place grid penalty for the next race. I think Robert Schwartzman has one as well, even though he may never make it to F1. I think he's got a grid penalty incoming for something he did in practice in Mexico. So yeah, if these guys do make it back to F1 at some point, they'll have to start further down the grid, which again, that's just F1 in a nutshell, really. It's on your permanent record there forever. But yeah, people obviously were their last races in Formula One during Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, but it was someone's first race as well, that being Jack Doohan. I just want to give a little mention to the guy, Dev. I mean, a lot of people were really questioning whether he should come into the team for this one. The team obviously wants him to prepare him for his first full season next season. People questioning, well, this might cost Alpine sixth in the constructors. You know what, Esteban Ocon would have been a more surefire bet. We didn't see much of Jack in all honesty during this race, but he kept his nose clean, and to come in at the last minute, I think that's a decent weekend for his debut, really.
Yes, and just imagine the nerves that he might have found himself amid. Never an easy thing to go up against, the 20 fastest men in the world and just finding a premature debut, albeit amid a lot of nerves out there. But I think he did as well as he could. And even though he did not finish in points, I think kudos to him for keeping his cool and, just getting himself up close to some interesting battles out there. There were some key moments with Yuki Tsunoda, and then later on, he was also trying to fight some back markers off. But there was a moment with Pierre Gasly as well, and then Lance Stroll, of course, getting the better of him. But that was not before half a good lap of closely contested fighting. So I think Jack Doohan is somebody who has his best days ahead of him. Of course, he has a lot of a huge expectation to carry with him because he's the son of a 5 consecutive World Championship 500cc motorcycle Grand Prix championship winner, the great Mick Doohan, and but I think he would be able to do well, and he has all the time in the world to you know right now, with the season coming to an end, he can just sit down with his father, reflect on how his debut race went, just also get a load of the kind of talent which is coming through the ranks. By the way, guys like, of course, Bortoleto are not gonna make it any easy for youngsters like Jack Doohan, and I think we have some remarkable talent to witness where the next year stands, George. But I think the Gold Coast Australia born driver should be able to do well. And I've heard a rumor that he's going to come back with the number 7 on his car. He says Kimi is one of my idols, so I'm not complaining. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've heard that rumor as well. Yeah, apparently he wants number 12, but Antonelli has bagsied that, so it might well be number 7 for Jack Doohan next season. And yeah, if he has half the talent of his father, he will be a very, very good Grand Prix driver for sure. But yeah, let's go through who we think was driver of the day today. Owain, I'll start with you. Who was your pick?
My pick, I mean, it has to be. I mean, he got. I think you know what I was going to say. He got lucky, but really didn't. It would have been so easy for him to be punted out of the race. What was going on at the chicane midway down to the two straights. But Charles Leclerc absolutely placed his car to perfection. To go from 19th on the grid, admittedly with a brand new energy store, which must help. To go from 19th on the grid to being on the podium, is absolutely astounding. I mean, I don't think that in and of itself is absolutely astounding to manage that. He placed his car exactly where he needed to on that first lap and made the bulk of the rest of the race so much easier for him. It's very few drivers who could do that. I think that's the sort of the mark of a champion, to be able to do that and power through the field on a track which doesn't offer much overtaking, even with its changes. I think it's brilliant work, and he should be proud of himself for that.
Yeah, absolutely. For me as well, I concur with Leclerc. I think he's the standout driver from today for sure. There's been some standout drivers, of course, throughout the field, but for me, Leclerc going all the way from pretty much last to first like that, last to third, I should say, to back up his teammate, Carlos Sainz like that was fantastic. He did everything he could to help Ferrari out in the Constructors' Championship today. Ruby, who's your pick for driver of the day?
Yeah, again, I've got to go with Charles Leclerc. I said yesterday after that terrible qualifying compounded by the 10 place grid penalty that he was going to need a sort of Brazil 2021 Lewis Hamilton-esque drive to make a difference in the constructors' battle with McLaren. And whilst he did do a fantastic drive and, ultimately went from, as you say, P19 to P3, there just wasn't enough in the tyres to get any further. But I think he absolutely extracted the maximum amount of that Ferrari today, and the moves on the awareness on lap 1 to even put his car in a place where you maybe wouldn't want to be putting your car on lap 1. Hats off to him, fantastic. I would also like to give an honorary shout out to Lewis Hamilton, because again, another fantastic drive, final one with Mercedes. But I've already waxed lyrical about Lewis enough on this podcast. They'll be accusing me of British bias next.
Yeah, if they're not already, of course. Yeah. Dev, is it going to be a full house for Leclerc?
No, I'm going to give it to Carlos Sainz.
Oh, come on. I'm joking. Go on.
It was a great drive by Sainz, I would say. I mean, just finishing his final ever race, I don't think he's going to be back at Scuderia again anytime. Even though he has a contract there with Williams, which has a pretty open clause that, he can actually switch teams. But I don't see that happening because, Ferrari again have sort of pulled their socks up and they want to focus on the future. And of course, Hamilton being an exception because he's an exceptional driver. But for all that he did this year, missed out on a race, came back and won a Grand Prix. That to Australia, which it's not the easiest to overtake there. And, overtook Verstappen, then Verstappen retired the car for him to just retain the lead and win. And then finishing his Ferrari career with a strong podium, the exact performance with which he had garnered his maiden podium during that win now mission. I mean, hats off to Carlos Sainz. But that does not mean that his teammate Charles had a had a bad day. It was an exemplary drive, arguably Charles' best drive since Monaco, a sentimental win and a win for the ages. But again, it was an effort in which he was assisted by his teammate because Sainz stuck it out that day for his teammate, and he blocked Piastri and the other rampaging cars. And but yeah, good day in the house for Ferrari. Good day for Sainz. For me, the driver of the day. Sorry, guys.
Well, it's an all Ferrari driver of the day at least. That is something. But yeah, we've had an absolutely bumper season this season. 24 races in 2024. We've covered them all. One last promo for everybody to go through where we can, where you guys can hear and see more from our content. Wayne, if people want to hear and see more of you, where can they head?
Right here on the GridTalk podcast. I won't steal your thunder so much, but I will plug our socials, which are probably still Ruby's thunder, unfortunately. But if you want to stay in touch with GridTalk over the winter break, which is long needed at this point, I don't know how the teams do it, let alone us. So yeah, make sure you follow us on all of the social media platforms at GridTalk UK, on all the social media platforms with the @ I believe.
Fair enough. Thank you, Owain. Ruby, same question to you. Where can people hear and see more from you?
Yeah, if people want to find more from me, I'm on Instagram and Threads at Ruby Rose Price. You can find me on Blue Sky at Rubes. And if you want to hear more of my opinions on Formula One, there's most of the entire back catalogue of Grid Talk to peruse during the off season. So give that a go. And I'll also give us a shout out to our Patreon, where you can listen to Beyond the Grid Talk, our Patreon exclusive podcast, and it's been very fun with the one episode that we've done so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dev gave a little mention to the rookies for next year, and that's one of the topics that we had on there as well. It was a lot of fun doing that, and we'll be doing it every month. And we'll shout out the Patreons as well, the top tiers Patreons as well, pretty soon as well at the end of the show. Dev, if people want to hear and see and read more from you, where can they head?
So I write some features for f1chronicle.com, for which I'm grateful to Jared, as I always say. I'm also doing a lot of Instagram content for Cairo Sports official. That's the page of the website, cairosports.com. And yeah, we do a bit of F1. And then there is this program called Pit Lane Perspective we've started recently on What's Up Life. That's the name of the page on Instagram. In fact, it's What's Up Life World. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Fair enough, Dev. Definitely go check out those sites. If people want to see more from me, I too am a part of the F1 Chronicle, doing lots of video content. Already got a couple of videos out doing my race review for today, and also going over the 5 biggest moments of the season for McLaren as they win their first championship since 1998. And yes, I'm going to keep saying that as much as possible. No, I don't care. I'm gonna keep going with it. But yeah, Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, just like this one, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search for F1 Grid Talk for our big back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to the race results. A big thank you to Jared Bradley, Bill Armstrong, and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon as well. If you want to go support the show further, why not sign up to our Patreon for exclusive content like the Patreon Beyond the Grid Talk that Ruby mentioned just earlier. We'll have another one coming out later this month for December as well. And also make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel to make sure you're the first to know when each new weekly episode is released. We'll be back very soon with plenty more F1 content. We'll have things like the driver grades coming up as well pretty soon. And thank you very much for listening and watching the Grid Talk podcast throughout this entire season. We'll be going into the post show now, so if you're watching the live stream, do stick around for that. We will be answering your questions on the live chat. And of course, this was presented by Bets Online. And goodbye. There we go. So let us know when we can go into live thing. Post show underway. Right, okay, so let's go through some of these questions because I know there's quite a few to go through. So Tom Horrocks is up first, one of our presenters here on Grid Talk. He says, when Alonso re-signed for McLaren in 2013, I think he means to say 2015. I think it was 2015. He was asked why he had more faith in McLaren than Ferrari. He said, "My words, McLaren will win a championship before Ferrari will." He was right. It turns out he was right. However, around the same time, Ron Dennis also described the Honda engine as a thing of beauty. I remember that interview, and its competitiveness as being without question. So some you win and some you lose. Very much, yeah, very much hard to predict Formula One future. I mean, I was very hyped for the McLaren Honda partnership, and put it this way, I'm very glad they went back to Mercedes.
Yeah, I mean that McLaren Honda was such a poor competitor, like you wouldn't have seen a championship won with it, I don't think. I don't even think the Red Bull Honda powertrain, whatever it is nowadays that we've got, I don't think even with that, the McLaren team that we've got today were winning. Um, no, I can't see it. It just wasn't a very positive relationship as an organization.
I think there's something to be said for the fact that actually, you know what? I was about to say I think there's something to be said for the fact that Red Bull were more used to having to deal with being a customer team in that sort of way, and but also being a priority. Whereas I know McLaren I don't think maybe sort of did so well out of that change from the way of working with Mercedes to the way that they had to work with Honda. But then again, they seem to have worked very, very well. They've gone back to working with Mercedes and they're fine. So maybe it's that. Maybe they just get on with Mercedes AMG high performance powertrains. I don't know, they're very odd. Like to be fair, the Red Bull Honda still won a championship before the Ferrari power units have in the hybrid era.
True,
So it's
yeah.
still technically true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think, when was the last time that a team that's a customer that has a works team? So I don't mean like Red Bull with Honda because there was no Honda works team then. I don't mean like Braun and Mercedes because there wasn't a Mercedes works team at that point. Like, when was the last time?
2013.
Oh yeah, Renault. Oh, it doesn't really count. Renault's rubbish though. Like, come
What do you mean
on.
Renault's rubbish? I don't know what to tell you. Like,
True. Yeah. Well, technically there wasn't a Renault works team in 2013, but there was in 2010. So yeah, it's
okay,
not that
right.
long,
Okay,
I suppose.
we'll go back to 2010. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, so it's not been that long, but it's still impressive what McLaren have done, in my opinion, to produce a car that works better with the Mercedes engine than the Mercedes. But yeah, another question from Tom Horrocks is Lando now the quickest qualifier in Formula One? That's a tough one to say. I'll open that up to you guys.
I mean, he did win the DHL fastest lap pit award for this season with six of them compared to the three that the next best drivers had got. Wait, that's not even qualifying. What am I on
I
about?
was going to say,
I know what you meant. Yeah.
Yeah, one lap pace is certainly something to be said for. Particularly if you can get the one lap pace in a race context. But yeah, I think Charles Leclerc probably has more one lap pace in his bag if the car
Hmm.
delivers than Lando Norris does. Um, but he's certainly been a very quick driver in qualifying this season. He's just lacking that part when it comes to getting off the line, except today.
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
fairness, it is the part that they practice least.
Unless you're Kevin Magnussen, in which case you get noted for incidents after the race.
Yeah, that's fine, Dev. If you need to head off, not a problem. Thanks for joining us, mate. Do appreciate it. See you soon. Um, yeah, I mean, Charles Leclerc's a shout for sure. The amount of poles that he got in that Ferrari compared to the amount of wins he's got is frankly ridiculous. He's got like four times as many poles as what he does victories or something like that, which is
It's because Max Verstappen was winning them all last season and the season before.
yeah, that didn't help. That didn't help. It's very impressive what he does over one lap. I'd shout out Max Verstappen as well. I mean, he's had a lot of pole positions where sometimes you just wouldn't expect him to be that far up the order.
Go on, Owain.
I want to say like that. There's a lot to be said for. I don't know who is the fastest. In some ways, I'd give it to. I don't know because in some ways, I think Are they not a faster qualifier if you've got better race pace as a car? Like if your car's got faster race pace, then when you qualify ahead of someone whose car is only good at qualifying,
Hmm.
surely that's more impressive, if that makes sense.
It does
Yeah.
contextualize it a lot.
Like, yeah, the 2013 Mercedes was amazing at qualifying with how quickly it keep the tires up, but look at how many times it didn't win because of that. The Haas, for example, every time, very good qualifying car at times, but could not keep its tires to last. Is that not slightly less impressive in some ways? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's one of the variables with Formula One. You don't know what the car setup is. They might well have just, gone for a one lap setup sort of thing and just stuck it on pole and hope for the best. You don't know. They'll never admit something like that, so we have no way of knowing. But the best way to look at it, I suppose, is the amount of poles. I'd probably say Leclerc. I'd probably say Leclerc personally, but he'll be
Yeah.
going up against the guy who's got more pole positions than anybody else next year. So we'll see how that
I
goes.
don't quite. Unfortunately, I don't. I'll put it this way: that Singapore lap in 2018 was a long, long while ago. You know,
Yeah.
and it's
George
With
has
completely
wiped
different
the floor with him in
regulations.
qualifying. Yeah.
yeah, but Nico Rosberg wiped the floor with Lewis
Equal machinery.
yeah in 20 yeah, but in 2014.
Did it
Uh,
actually? Yeah. All right.
no, yeah, no, he did, but I can't remember what the stats are, but he did. But at the end of the day, Lewis Hamilton won 11 races compared to five. Like,
Yeah. That's a better way of putting it. Um,
Yeah.
if you can qualify well, but as Lando has proved, you can qualify well, but it doesn't matter because they don't give points out for qualifying; they give out points for races.
that
Yeah.
is true. Yeah.
The points
Could
are
be a
given
pole point.
the points are given out on a Sunday.
It's what they're replacing the fastest lap point with from
Oh,
2025.
God damn it. Imagine.
Well, you do have to win poles, I mean, but then again, it's going to be a race win per year if you could qualify on pole every race.
Yeah.
Got another question for this time from Buttercream Fiend with one of the best names on YouTube is that. Do you think McLaren was destined to win another constructors, or has Zach Brown saved them from the depths of the midfield? I think it's saved them from the depths of the midfield. I mean, you look at where McLaren, when we gave it a mention earlier on, like 2017. Oh my God, 2017, that car. It was, yeah,
A
Vietnam
car,
flashbacks.
a car so bad that McLaren allowed Fernando Alonso to go and do other things he wanted to do. To go do the Indy 500 and
Yeah.
in 2018 and 19 to go and race in the WEC. I mean, admittedly, a couple of years he wasn't there in F1, but it's still not the point. Like, it was so bad.
Yeah,
And
and
I
I
mean,
think certainly like a lot of the credit does have to go to Zach Brown as well. He came in replacing Ron Dennis and he's put the right people in the right places. Andrea Stella as the team principal
Yeah.
is, a genius, like assigning to a position. And you've got a question as to whether like what happened today would have happened without Andrea Stella. Um,
Yeah.
because who was it? I've forgotten his name. The guy that went to Sauber.
Andrea
And
Andrea
Seidel.
Seidel.
yeah, and has since been dropped by Sauber as well.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because he was absolutely brilliant at Porsche.
Yeah,
But the spotlight of Formula One is the brightest. So
Mm,
I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that nobody is destined to win. Nobody's destined to go back to the top. I mean, look at Williams.
yeah.
In the nicest possible way. Look at Ferrari. I mean, Ferrari has been on a drought for an awful long time. Um, as has Williams, as had McLaren for a long, long time. Um, I think there's a lot to be said for you're not owed anything in Formula One. You're not destined to go back to the top. You have to work for it every single time. That's what we've seen at Ferrari every time they've come back to the fore. You have to put in that massive amount of effort to assert yourself as the dominant team. And even with Red Bull as well. Like, I think that nobody's destined to have it. It's you have to work for it. You have to earn it. Um, Yeah, no, it's a testament to Zach Brown's ability to get the sponsors back on side and things like that. Has put them back there.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we do laugh about what happened with him, but Oscar Piastri, the way that he got him from Alpine, would that have happened before with someone else in charge? Who knows, But getting that team together like that and just making it work like he has. I mean, I think overall McLaren have had the best car by some distance for most of this season. It's just the difference is that they've not quite had enough experience when it comes to winning. That win for Lando Norris in Miami was their first win in nearly 3 years in a Grand Prix anyway. I don't really count the Qatar sprint because it wasn't a Grand Prix win. But for them to do that and then learn on the job in a sense, just kind of get through the season and win the constructors like they have, I think he's got to take massive credit for it. And next season they have the monkey off the back. They've won a championship, so they'll be a more dangerous prospect in my opinion, to be honest. But I think it's going to be a fascinating season in general. There's four teams in with an absolute shot of winning the constructors next year, and I really, and how long has it been since we've said that, and realistically thought it was a chance.
14 years.
Yeah, 2010. Yeah. Hell of a season that. Really, really good season. Yeah, let's move on. Another one from Tom. He said, Perez walking away from his stricken Red Bull gave me end of Incredible Hulk movie vibes. But you're all too young to remember. No, I am not. No, I am not. Unless you
Are we talking about the Ang Lee one, or are we talking about the one in the MCU that Ruby's watched more recently?
the Ed Norton one.
Yeah.
So
I think we're talking Ang Lee, aren't we? 2004.
Ang Lee 2004 is what I would be expecting as well. But even then, we're still old enough to remember that. The only person I think in GridTalk that wouldn't be old enough to remember that's Louis.
Yeah. Yeah, he would have been like 3. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, God, I mean, with Perez, I feel for him because today for me wasn't his fault. I mean, yeah, you could say rightfully he shouldn't have been down there because he shouldn't have been. But he was unlucky today. There have been loads of times this season where he's just not been good enough. I'll have to see. For me, he's been lucky in a sense because Tsunoda and Lawson in his last few races haven't been pulling too many trees up, and the car's not been as good. For what it's worth, I think Perez is going to be driving the Red Bull at the start of 25. I'll be surprised if he's driving at the end of 25 for them, but I think he's going to be there next year. What do you guys think, though?
I think capitalism is what's kept Sergio Perez in his seat for the last 3 years. Capitalism, the ultimate bad guy. But yeah, I think you could arguably go as far to say that the reason as to why Red Bull aren't even in like second in the championship is because of Sergio Perez. We've had 7 different winners from 4 constructors. The only one that's not won a race out of those top 4 teams is Sergio Perez. And the points difference between Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez is, 300 or so points. Like that's just not good enough. Regardless of how, obviously we always talk about how a world championship driver can elevate a mediocre car. This very much wasn't a good Red Bull for a lot of the season, and that's obviously been, there's been a lot of talk of Sergio Perez saying this isn't a good car for a few seasons, but Max Verstappen could handle it. But just Sergio Perez's season has been awful to watch. But any McLaren fan, and I know Tom Horrocks has particularly enjoyed it, and not just because of his own personal, grievances with Checo Perez, but yeah, it's just, yeah. I also agree with you, George. I think Checo's gonna be in that car in 2025. Like he's got a contract. There's money behind the scenes, and they've not. I think in any other season, the second Red Bull driver's going. Gasly got nowhere near this much time. Albon got nowhere near this much time. Kvyat had to, I think destroy other cars in order to get demoted in the end. And Verstappen was the one that benefited from that. But they've just not got anyone in the wings that's worthy of that second seat, I don't think.
It's the curse of that second seat, isn't it? And if anybody has grievances with Sergio Perez, it's definitely me for what I had to do in the race review 12 months ago for this event. But Go
Hey,
back and watch it if you
you
want.
made the bet. You made the bet, and you've got to
Ah,
stick to it.
I
And I
did.
make that rule for everybody that's prepared to make a bet for Grid Talk.
Yes, yes, and I think we both know what we're talking about here as well because there's a certain somebody who hasn't done it yet. So, Tom
Oh, smart,
Downey, come on.
smart. I mean, I'm smart enough not to, but
Fair.
I'm not making that bet.
Yeah, yeah. My other half was horrified when I told her about that. I'm just like, yeah. So if you watch, because she watches the podcast, just like, yeah. So if you watch it this weekend, might be a little different.
A little
It
different,
it
eh?
was it was just the mustache as well from
Oh no.
November that just topped it off perfectly. Like peak cinema.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that could have made it better is if I just went with the Mexico filter from Breaking Bad for that episode or something.
Just put your McLaren top in front of your light so like it gives you that
Oh
amber glow.
yeah. Oh, I didn't have lights back then. I didn't have better lights, mics, or recording equipment, but I do nowadays. So yeah, could have been one I could have replicated this year, but I'm not making that bet again, and I would have lost it. So oh man, so where are we
Oh,
going here? So Buttercream Fiend has also asked, how do you plan to fill the F1 void over the next few months? I mean, we're still going to be talking about F1. We're still going to be doing the show. Just kind of reflecting on this year, looking forward to next year. For me, a lot of football and other sports as well, probably. Christmas too is a lot of fun. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a gap that always gets shorter between these years with F1 of these seasons. But it feels like it gets longer. It feels like it's such a long time we have to wait. But it's 97 days or something I heard in the commentary today. It's not that much.
I was gonna say that's not a lot, and there's gonna be launch season with that thing at the O2 and all that, and
Where
Mm.
the cars aren't actually being launched and some
no,
teams don't actually want to be there.
no, of course they don't.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Yeah, it's a bizarre situation, that reveal. As soon as it got announced, I was like, yeah, they're not gonna do it though, because they don't want to give away the secrets and they want to do their own thing for their own sponsors.
Let's be honest, it's all gonna be show cars, isn't it?
It's gonna be, I mean, Ferrari have said it's gonna be, I think they're gonna do a 24 car and a 25 livery or something. It's gonna be a glorified livery reveal. But it's a sellout. People have sold it out, so people want to see it. So it's achieved its aim. But for us hardcore fans, it's like, so what? We're gonna get
Ferrari
the
are having their own car launch anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's Ferrari. Ferrari are different. They're allowed different things.
They won't be the only one. I don't think.
No.
I mean, I'll stick my neck out and say I don't think any of the top teams will do it. You might see like an Alpine or a Sauber doing it, being like, "Oh, we've actually got a 25 car here. Look at us." But the top teams aren't going to want to give away any secrets, and the last thing they want is tens of thousands of people, all with camera phones, taking pictures of every single angle of their cars.
Yeah, but with lighting that they can't control as well.
Yeah,
All it
just do it
takes
on
is
a
one.
continuous burst.
Well, all it takes is one frame, and we had. I mean, like we had. It's a weird thing to bring up, but it was the Eras tour where fans in the US and the UK were finding out the best ways to photograph it. And that's just a personal memory. They were finding out exactly what size of camera you could take in, and the best way to process it and stuff, so you got the best photos. Can you imagine what it's going to be like for you could buy as many tickets as you want to try and get eyes on other cars. They're gonna have it might be an appreciable part of the budget for some of these teams.
You just take it out of the catering budget.
Why have you got a Canon P100D? Like that's not edible.
It is if you make it out of cake.
Oh man. Buttercream Fiend has also asked, and in George versus Russell, is that meant to be George versus?
Max versus George.
I'm
The
gonna
whole.
say, I mean, I've said some choice words about Russell, but I didn't think that'd be about me. Do you think we will see much drama over the break, and who holds more sway, the leader of the Drivers' Association or the standing world champ? I mean, I think his GPDA role is under threat given what he's been doing. I don't know how it all works. I don't know if it's like a yearly thing that you get elected to, or just kind of an honorary position that you take up for as long as you want. Um, I mean, it ultimately depends who the drivers agree with, and I think for me personally, the conduct of Russell has been more than a little questionable to say the least. And I've heard rumours that I'm not going to say what because it's got a swear word in it. We're going out live, of course. But the quote that Russell's saying that Max would send him into the barriers upside down. Apparently, he didn't say anything like that, and it's on the Netflix camera, so we'll see on Drive to Survive next year anyway what actually happened.
I mean, they added Roman Grosjean swearing before he hit the barriers for Drive to Survive,
Oh,
so
God.
Yeah, don't expect that to be the
they might
truth.
just dramatize it even further. Um,
Get the V8 engines in.
yeah, but I've seen that like the grid itself is very much sort of like 50-50 split. But obviously
Mm,
across this weekend there seems to have been a lot more sort of like anecdotal evidence like against obviously what George Russell went into this weekend saying.
mm,
Um, I think, like there's a lot to be said for just a war of words. And the drivers should probably also remember they are, role models to and the next generation of fans, the next generation of drivers. We their off-track conduct should be as respectful as their on-track conduct. We want to see them fighting, but we don't want to see them, hanging the laundry out to dry, like even just in interviews and stuff like that. They've even got sponsor obligations to fulfill, and like, if you're being a bit of a, you know,
Spanner.
aggressive and yeah, if you're being a bit of a spanner in like your interviews with all of like the brands like on display, you know, that's
mm.
reputational damage that can happen as well, and brands don't like that. Why do you
Teams
think they
don't
don't want
like
to
it
be on the
more.
McLaren?
I was going to say teams don't like it more.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, we've not heard the end of it. There'll be more drama with that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's not all bad for George Russell though. Apparently, only being 2 points behind Hamilton over the last 3 years together at Mercedes, which is very impressive. Thanks to Tom for that stat. Yeah, a bit like Button and Hamilton and McLaren. Their 3 seasons together, Button outscored Hamilton by a little bit. So very close overall, with not the most competitive car during that time.
In some ways, it's quite a shame that they haven't both finished every race. Like, I'd like to be able to compare that more, taking out anomalies and things like that.
Hmm.
I guess that's what you get from the 3 season comparison as opposed to just comparing one season.
I
But
guess, but on the other hand, I'm just sorry. I'm just looking at like
yeah,
you want to look at be able to take out just from a statistical point of view. You want to be able to take out the anomalies of running into someone or
each other.
or each other or failures or something like that, or crashes and things like that. You want to be able to take that out. I mean, obviously, look at that data because that's in. Sorry, this is just the statistics breakdown. But you want to look at that data because that tells you a number of things as well. But particularly crashes. But
Hmm. But I think overall it shows that Russell's overall over this time, he's held himself in
Max
pretty,
Verstappen.
yeah.
Oh, not Max Verstappen. Max Hamilton. There we go. Sorry.
Max Hamilton.
Is
That's
that is that going to be the new name?
no. That's actually the even better genetics compared to Kelly Piquet and Max
I mean,
Verstappen's styles.
Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton will do very well to have a baby together. I
Think
don't
of
think.
the genes. Think of the genes.
Oh
That
man.
requires like generational planning, like to the extent that we don't see these days.
No, no,
With
it
good
requires
reason.
eugenics. That's what it requires. It's not. That's not
Exactly.
genetic. That's not genetic modification at that point.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, let's move away from
Good idea,
eugenics.
This isn't beyond the grid talk.
This is beyond something else. But yeah, who will be back on the grid first out of all of Bottas, Colapinto, Ricardo, Perez, pending Sargent, Magnussen, and Zhou? We'll take Perez out of that because we've kind of had a say on him.
Magnussen won't be. He's gone off to do sports cars like his dad. So
Yeah, yeah, he's going to BMW.
I think
I,
Colapinto.
I think Colapinto as well. Yeah, I think Sargent
Sorry,
just
I'm
kind of.
completely.
No, it's fair enough. I think Sargent has kind of proven that it's just too much of a step up for him. Zhou's done okay, but he's not exactly done amazing. A Bottas I can see coming back. I mean, I said that he might come back with Cadillac or something in 26. I think it'd be a good option for him, but I'd be surprised if we don't see Colapinto on the grid at some point next year. And I think Ricardo's done with F1. he's had his 2 goals, and I think he's just done with it all. So I don't think he's coming back, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a bit like when obviously, we saw Michael Schumacher come back for 2010 to 2012, and just it was, yeah, there was some moments, but there was never the Michael Schumacher of 2006 and beyond, like earlier than that we saw. Daniel Ricciardo, obviously not the same level of comparison, but we never saw the Daniel Ricciardo that we saw in Red Bull, after he left Red Bull. But, we saw some flashes of promise again in Renault, but just the RB days for Daniel Ricciardo are something that no one's going to want to talk about when it comes to, looking back fondly on F1. Like, it's a cautionary tale. Like, yeah, just because your driver's done well in a practice session, well, a testing session with no actual competitive elements of it doesn't mean that they are, in line and destined to return to the top and join the greats. But I think, yeah, Daniel Ricciardo's not in the picture. I think, as you've both said, Franco Colapinto's the most likely of the ones that have left us today to return, and hopefully with a few less crashes. But maybe he's got that out of his system now. He could start off really well for Williams halfway through next season when Albon gets poached by Red Bull to replace Sergio Perez. Who knows? I do not want to see Alex Albon back in the Red Bull family of drivers.
Goodness me. Yeah, no, I just yeah, he got out. He got out. I think he's doing himself a lot better being at being at Williams than Red Bull. Lot less stressful. But yeah, I think we'll probably call it there. To be honest, we've already talked about Jared's suggestion with the stewards and stuff. I mean, we're not going to open the can of worms that is the FIA at the moment. I've already done that many times. I'm sick of talking about them, to be honest. But there we go. Sign off 2024 with that. But of course, we'll have some shows coming out for you guys as well in the off season, which will be out potentially as soon as like next week or so. Ruby, I know you said the schedule literally earlier today, but I can't remember when you said it.
Yeah, I think we should be getting the season review out for the next week or so, and then driver grades and Christmas and 2025, which is going to be a banging F1 year.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. But yeah, I've said it a few times. Thanks to everybody who's watched, liked, shared, commented, just enjoyed this ride with us because we've enjoyed being part of it. So thanks everybody for that. And yeah, we'll see you. We'll see you soon for some more F1 content here on Grid Talk. Have a good one, guys.